This is Hashtag History, episode 94. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And I'm doing something with this episode that I've never done before.
I'm so excited.
As you all know, nearly 100 episodes later, I always choose a focused topic. We may go off on some tangents while we're discussing said topic, but there's always a narrow, focused topic, right?
Totally.
Well, this week, there is so much to discuss that we actually sort of have multiple topics.
Yeah.
Think of it similar to, Leah, your Elizabeth Bathory episode or your Van Buren sisters that we just did, where we wove through a number of topics and people. Because this week, we are discussing hidden presidential illnesses. I think we all know now that Franklin D. Roosevelt had polio, but most people didn't learn this until after he passed. In fact, most people had no idea during his lifetime that he was paralyzed from the waist down.
Yeah.
Or I think we all know now about the many health issues that John F. Kennedy faced, but most people, again, during his lifetime did not. Moreover, many people did not know that these severe health issues that he had would cause him to have a heavy addiction to painkillers and anti-anxiety medications.
What? Our president?
For us, it's like, and.
Yeah.
But another one of these fascinating stories, it wouldn't be until after the death of Grover Cleveland that the nation would learn that while he was president, he had undergone an undercover surgical operation conducted on a private yacht to remove a cancerous tumor.
That sounds more dangerous than it needs to be.
It's pretty dangerous. Because of the pedestal that American presidents are placed upon, oftentimes these very human illnesses and diseases are hidden from the general public. But they matter. Presidential illnesses can truly change the course of history. In fact, some historians believe that because of Woodrow Wilson's series of strokes, many of which he kept hidden for a long period of time, he was unable to fight harder for the United States to join the League of Nations, which may have helped to prevent World War II. I'm really super excited to dive into this week's episode because it allows us the flexibility to weave through the various people and various time periods throughout history. And also, just kind of as like a side note, presidential history was kind of one of my main introductions to really being fascinated by history when I was in high school. So I'm so excited about it. We today are going to be spanning the whole length of American presidents from 1789 to today.
Woo!
But first, a cocktail.
A cocktail.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Hashtag History,
the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike,
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
First and foremost, we must give a huge thank you to Vanessa and Laura from A Tap on the Wrist podcast. These gals bought us a total of 3 cocktails this season, and we cannot thank them enough.
That is so sweet. And we were on one of their episodes.
Yes.
It feels like a million years ago.
What was the topic we did with them?
We talked about an amazing woman that owned a bar and fought for women's equal rights.
It was like women in... like bartending women or cocktail women or something like that. Yeah, that was cool.
It was so much fun. That was one of my favorite episodes that I've ever researched.
Yeah.
They're amazing. If you haven't listened to them yet, their podcast is A Tap on the Wrist. And they cover so much, like history and true crime and women's history. They're amazing.
Yeah.
So definitely check them out.
Yeah. So, because this week we are digging into presidential illnesses, I thought, what's the cocktail I could do that has something to do with being sick, right?
Yeah.
Or ill. And the only one I could really think of was a hot toddy.
I think that's perfect.
Have you ever had a hot toddy?
I feel like I have had one before, but it didn't stand out in my memory.
Yeah. So I think I've had one hot toddy in my life, and I actually think you were there for it.
Oh.
I feel like it was that time we went to Tahoe, and I feel like we went out to eat, and I might have gotten a hot toddy.
I don't remember this at all.
Or maybe you got a hot toddy? Somebody got a hot toddy.
Maybe that's when I had my hot toddy.
And I tried it, and I was like, meh. So I personally feel like hot toddies are just a little bland.
Lacking in flavor.
Yeah. Because, okay, so a hot toddy contains hot water or tea, very often chamomile, which is the case for us. So hopefully we don't get sleepy. A shot of liquor, whiskey in our case.
Of course.
Yeah. Honey, lemon juice, and then we also added cinnamon sticks. But I've seen so many different, variations on
Because you can do any liquor.
You can really do any liquor that pairs well with whatever the other ingredients are. Got it. So again, we did chamomile, we did like a bourbon whiskey, we did honey, lemon, and then we did put 2 cinnamon sticks in each of our drinks.
Love it.
So I did want to give a little background on this before we sip and rate. According to vinepair.com, the toddy as we know today started in British-controlled India in the 1610s. The name derives from a Hindi word, taddy, meaning beverage made from fermented palm sap.
Oh.
Yeah. So by 1786, taddy was officially written down and defined as beverage made of alcoholic liquor with hot water, sugar, and spices.
Oh my God, I love this history.
Yeah. So the British, with their persistent habit of appropriating from conquered cultures.
What do you mean?
Took that beverage and they really claimed it as their own. In the cold winters and everyday dampness of northern England and Scotland, pubs would pour hot water into Scotch whiskey. The United Kingdom trade routes with India made exotic spices routine, and pubs started throwing more than hot water and whiskey into their drinks, like spices or teas and stuff, and that is how the hot toddy came to be.
I love learning the history.
Yeah.
All right, here's to hopefully and enjoying it.
I hope we do.
Cheersies.
Cheers. It's nice that it's warm.
That's what I was just going to say.
Well, it's been chilly here in Sac. Oh, it's good. Oh, it's really good. I love it. Oh my God. Like, we've been sitting here for a long time because it was boiling hot and now it's just like warm.
We talked a lot before the episode started after we made the drink. I think I love it too.
I think I love it.
How much do you love it? Mine's like an 8.
8 or 9.
Wow. I can definitely see the appeal of this, like when you're not feeling great, when your like throat's kind of sore.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my God, I almost wish I had a sore throat right now.
Warms the soul.
Have I ever wished to have a sore throat? No. But now would be one of those times.
Today's the day.
I don't know if any of our listeners or Leah, if you're familiar with the medicine ball at Starbucks. So if you go to Starbucks, think of this. Okay, let's go pre-COVID though. Think of in 2019. You went to work because that's what you did, even when you were sick.
What?
And your throat just felt a little funky.
Yeah, so not just your throat. You also were a little foggy.
Your nose was dripping,
but you had to go to work,
but you were still putting in your 8-hour shift.
Yeah, because that was what was expected of you.
Yep. And at like 9 a.m. when all your coworkers are like, "Hey, want to do a Starbucks run?" You're like, "But of course." And you would ask for a medicine ball at Starbucks. Anyway, it makes me kind of laugh now just how the world has changed, because I totally have gotten like medicine ball drinks from Starbucks before. And now it's like within the last couple months, my husband and I were at Starbucks just like hanging out reading a book. And I heard someone ask for a medicine ball at the Starbucks counter. And I was like, they have COVID.
They have COVID. No doubt.
Like, no doubt. What are you doing out in public? Yep. Whereas like things have they're so different now. Anyway, what exactly, we just looked it up, what exactly is in a medicine ball?
It's fairly straightforward. It contains hot water, steamed lemonade, a combo of Tiavana's jade citrus mint green tea, and peach tranquility herbal tea.
Okay.
And honey.
The article that she's reading this from says that the medicine ball is bogus, but I will just speak from personal experience.
Does it taste good?
It tasted good.
Does it make you feel better?
And it made my throat feel nice. So it works.
Yeah. I mean, who are they?
Yeah. Anyway, this kind of reminds me of a medicine ball from Starbucks. I'm really liking it.
I like this so much more than the one that I have had before in my life, which I'm pretty sure was with you in Lake Tahoe.
I don't remember that, but sure.
South Lake Tahoe.
Sure. I love this. Like you were kind of saying before we started, we're California girls, we're Sacramento girls, and we were having fake spring like a week or two ago where... Yeah, when you were gone, you were on the East Coast when it was snowing.
Yeah, frigid weather.
Here it was lovely. It was like 75 degrees for a couple days, and now we're back down into the 50s. And 50s are very, very cold for us California girls. So this is perfect.
It is nice.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so where I want to start with this episode is to reflect on how hiding illnesses as a president is not a new concept. Mm-hmm. If you will recall, there was a pretty major story in late 2020 when then President Donald J. Trump tested positive for coronavirus. Now, I feel like we could go on a long tangent of all the thoughts and feelings surrounding this moment in history, but I bring it up for this reason. a lot of people were bothered by the lack of transparency regarding the reality of the president's condition.
Yeah.
The general public was told, for the most part, that Trump had only mild symptoms and was, quote, fatigued, but in good spirits, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
But we would later learn that while at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, he had received remdesivir therapy and supplemental oxygen. Again, we could spend a very long time on this topic alone, but the reason I bring it up is to share that a lack of transparency in regard to the president's health is not new. In fact, the reality of a president's health has been largely concealed going back more than 200 years.
I'm glad that we are getting to a place where people who are differently abled and have illnesses and stuff are able to just be complain about it. But it's still
Totally.
looked upon as a weakness.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you bring that up because I think in particular in a position such as President of the United States, having any form of being differently abled or having an illness or whatever also reflects on your ability to operate a country.
Yeah.
And so there's obvious motivations for why these sorts of things would be concealed.
Totally.
In an article I read by Robin Wright for The New Yorker, she stated that it is estimated that, quote, as many as half of American presidents have suffered illnesses, physical or mental, in office, unquote. Wright cites a medical review which states that, quote, the health of U.S. presidents has varied dramatically since George Washington first took the oath of office in 1789 while sterile, half deaf, and with only a single tooth, unquote. Gotta laugh. And that's a perfect segue because I want to acknowledge up top that we could quite literally go through every single president and discuss their health.
Yeah. Who hasn't been sick?
Exactly. Every single president has had some bout with illness, anywhere from poison ivy to lead poisoning. We're looking at you, Andrew Jackson, and that bullet that you had in your body for 20 plus years.
What?
I mean, I'm sure between the two of us, you and me, if someone were to run a historical health screening, they would discover that we too have had our own health issues from time to time.
I repeat, who hasn't?
Who has not?
Right. It's ridiculous to assume that people in power are immune.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, so I wanted to acknowledge that I will not be addressing every single president's health history, although if interested, ranker.com did exactly that, so you can go check them out.
Nice.
What I will be doing in this episode is focusing specifically on only a handful of presidents whose health was of concern while they were in the office, but were really good at hiding it, and also had potential to compromise or even drastically change the course of history had things gone otherwise.
Yeah.
So the first instance of a president's health being concealed from the general public comes from 1813. James Madison, who became the fourth president of the United States in 1809, is considered to be the father of the Constitution for his contributions to getting it ratified between, the Federalist Papers and his drafting of the Bill of Rights. This father of the Constitution, however, was very, very sick. In fact, I have a picture to show you really quickly. We're both huge fans of Hamilton, the musical.
Yes.
Let's check out a picture of James Madison from the Hamilton musical and tell me what you see.
Okay. He's coughing.
Yeah.
I think most people who listen to us regularly know I'm, other than Hamilton, not really the hugest fan of American history. Especially colonial founding fathers. I find it a little boring.
Which is so offensive.
I know it hurts.
Literally so offensive.
It hurts. But that was something I noticed during Hamilton, and I looked up afterwards. So I'm very happy that you included him.
Yeah, so we're going to show that on our Instagram. Be sure you're following us there to see that picture. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of Hamilton the musical, in all of his genius, he threw in several subtle hints throughout the musical. One of which is that James Madison, the person that's playing him, is always seen with a handkerchief and is oftentimes seen coughing into it throughout the musical. So why is that? Prior to the 1813 illness that we'll be discussing today, Madison had a long history of illness. In the early 1770s, when Madison was in his young 20s, he actually collapsed from a seizure. He would continue to have seizures over the course of his life, and historians continue to debate whether this was the result of epilepsy or perhaps they were panic attacks or hysteria. He would also suffer bouts of malaria, tuberculosis, smallpox, and yellow fever, which is all pretty remarkable that he survived given the time period.
Totally.
Not only the time period that we're talking about, but also the fact that Madison never weighed more than 100 pounds.
I did not know that.
He was, I believe, about 5'4" if I remember correctly. So he was just generally like a smaller statured gentleman. But in 1813, while Madison was president and while the country was in the midst of the War of 1812, he came down with bilious fever that was so intense and caused him so much fatigue that he was physically incapable of reading and examining documents that had been brought to him.
Which, like, when you're sick, I mean, other than watching TV, what do? You read.
Yeah, you read, you stare at your phone. I mean, even if you're watching the TV or you're staring at your phone, you're still able to read what's going on.
Yeah.
Pretty alarming.
Yeah.
So let's back it up to when this all began. On June 14th, 1813, Madison was set to meet with members of Congress, but his wife, Dolly, ended up speaking for him, saying that, quote, the president was sick in his chamber and could not meet with his friends that day, unquote. This is the first indication that Madison was under the weather. It didn't seem like things were too bad, though, because the following day, June 15th, Madison wrote to the Senate committee and said he would be well enough to meet the next day. However, on June 16th, the president didn't show up. He blamed it on his watch. Yeah, okay, Madison. Okay. All right. And he rescheduled their meeting for the next day.
That's like when you call in sick one day and then the next day is your vacation. It's like, really, you just took 2 days of vacation.
Or the other way around, you took a vacation and the next day you call in sick.
Yeah. It's like, so are you hungover? You know what I mean? Like, just take 2 days of vacation.
Just do it. We're all expecting it. We're not expecting you to come back in on a Friday when you've been out the entire week.
Yeah.
Just take the extra day.
Just do it.
Come June 17th, Madison sent along a message that he would yet again need to reschedule the meeting to the following day. So in case you're keeping count out there, this is now the third time that this meeting has been rescheduled. And of course, that next day, June 18th, the president didn't show up again. He sent along a message saying that he was sorry that he could not meet with the Senate committee and that he could no longer even attempt to give them a potential rescheduled date.
Yikes.
Those close to Madison knew how grave this situation was. After visiting the president, James Monroe said that Madison's illness, quote, has perhaps never left him, even for an hour, and occasionally the symptoms have been unfavorable. This is, I think, the 15th day.
Could you imagine
unquote.
being that sick for 15 days?
No, I absolutely can't. I would say like the worst sicknesses I've had, I was going to say like 3 days.
Yeah,
like,
I mean like where the worst
miserable.
of it.
Yeah, the worst of it was like 3 days and then you still feel kind of groggy for the next week.
Yeah.
15 days.
Of him not being able to read.
Yes. For the general public, the majority were unaware that their president was sick in bed for 3 straight weeks. So sick in bed that, like you just said, he couldn't even read the documents that were being brought to him. So sick that those closest to him were preparing for secession following his, what they believed, inevitable death. Madison would have a fever for 3 straight weeks, a fever that was oftentimes accompanied by vomiting and diarrhea before he finally started to feel better.
How a human being makes it through that is crazy.
Yes.
At that time.
At that time, I would say even now, absolutely at that time. But like even now, just diarrhea and vomiting, like how are you retaining any hydration whatsoever?
Yeah.
His wife, so exhausted from having cared for him day and night, actually wrote that, quote, now that I see he will get well, I feel as if I should die myself with fatigue, unquote.
I feel that, girl. I've been there. No, I mean, not
not to that extent, but of course, like when you're caring for another, like it exhausts you too.
Yeah.
By early July of 1813, Madison had begun working again, but still while laying in bed. In fact, I have a letter here from Madison that it's going to be really difficult to read the writing, but see if you can read what it says along the top of the letter, that very small print right at the top.
It says written down by something Jackson and dictated by something 1813.
That was actually pretty good. Yeah, so it's very difficult to read. Again, we'll post this to our Instagram so you can check it out. But this is a letter that across the top of it, it says it was written down by someone else. A gentleman named on this letter, it's J.G.
Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. J.G. Jackson as dictated.
J.M.
by James Madison, while sick in bed in 1813. It literally says
while
that.
in bed, yeah.
Sick in bed.
Oh, sick in bed.
Yeah. Crazy, right? He was having his letters dictated because he was so unwell he couldn't even respond to correspondence.
Yeah.
This letter, dated July 6th, was dictated from bed while he was still sick. He was still conducting presidential duties from his sick bed weeks after first contracting the illness.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a few more weeks before Madison started feeling mostly back to normal, although even still toward the end of August, Madison wrote, quote, I am reminded, however, by occasional touches of fever, produced, I believe, in the dregs of influenza, that some precautionary attention continued to be proper, unquote. It's pretty wild to think of having a fever, an actual fever, for 3 weeks.
I mean, if I have a fever for more than a day, like, I'm checking
Concerned.
myself into urgent care.
Totally. James Madison may have been the first president to hide a severe illness, but he certainly would not be the last.
Yeah.
The next president I'd like to talk about is Abraham Lincoln. And I argue for this one because although his mental illness was not necessarily hidden from those who personally knew him, I do believe it was hidden well enough from the general public that even now, more than 150 years since his presidency, I don't think many people actually know about the true, deep, chronic depression that Abraham Lincoln suffered for the majority of his life.
If I didn't know you, I probably wouldn't know about it.
Well, then actually that's great perspective because I was going to ask you, like, did you know that Lincoln was chronically depressed?
I don't know any of the details. I have heard it probably from you.
Mm-hmm. I think most people don't know. And so that's why I wanted to mention this one. Again, those that knew him personally knew about it, but like when you're studying history, that's not something, we don't talk about mental illness now as much as maybe we should. Certainly not 150 years ago.
No.
So like I mentioned, for those that knew Lincoln, his depression was well known. In fact, his law partner, William Herndon, even said of Lincoln, quote, his melancholy dripped from him as he walked, unquote. Lincoln spoke of suicide on a number of occasions and went through many bouts of depression that caused him to not be able to physically function.
Like, even, I just went to like multiple exhibits in Philadelphia and DC where I saw things about Lincoln.
And there was no mention.
And I mean, like, yeah, it's weird that they don't talk about, this is a huge part of his life. If he's unable to fucking walk, like.
And it was like, there was a period of his life between, I mean, this is getting into the really nitty gritty because I love Lincoln. I know so much about him. So I'm going to try not to say all the things, but just, yeah, there's a lot in Lincoln's life. Like, he was very seriously talking about suicide and really concerning a lot of his friends. And that's something that most people don't know.
No.
But it was well documented at the time by those that knew him personally.
And maybe this is something we can discuss at the end of the episode once we've gone through everything. Mm-hmm. But I personally think it's so important to see the human side of people.
Yep.
And I personally would appreciate knowing if someone's struggling with something and still successful and still able to do things. Yep. I think that's so impressive and important for people that are struggling themselves. You know?
I completely agree. That's something that we've talked about even with like podcasting before. I find so much encouragement when I see like huge podcast networks say the same things that we do.
Yeah.
That like,
ooh, it got deleted.
Exactly.
Yeah,
our episode got deleted. Our mic wasn't working that day. I'm like, oh my God, I feel honestly so much encouragement that people that are at such higher levels with so many more resources than we do go through the same things we do. And that's just like a minor example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not referring to like mental health or physical health.
Yeah.
But it is encouraging, exactly what you said, to hear when people that were successful and did accomplish such amazing, great things.
Did so through struggle.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy.
Yes.
And they still could do it.
Yes.
And that means you can.
Lincoln was very familiar with loss. Lincoln himself was only 9 years old when he lost his mom. He would later lose his first love when she was only 22, and he would lose one of his sons when that son was only 4 years old. The same year that Lincoln's 4-year-old son would die, his son Willie would be born. Not that you should pick and choose favorite kids, but Lincoln definitely did.
Yeah.
Willie was by far Lincoln's favorite kid. And I think some of that favoritism might have been a result of the tragic loss of his other son so close in time to when Willie was born.
Mm-hmm.
That made it all the more devastating when in 1862, when Lincoln was in office as the 16th president and the country was in the midst of the Civil War, Willie got sick with what we think was typhoid fever and would die at only 11 years old.
Yeah.
It is reported that Lincoln's depression following this dramatic loss caused him to quite literally stop running the country for a handful of days.
Can you blame him?
Of course not. He stopped attending meetings and he locked himself in a room of the White House all by himself and just wept for days.
This is like, for us to expect that a human being would ever like just be able to continue to run a country when their child died is weird.
It is weird. You're absolutely right. But the fact that we're talking about this now, like, can you believe he stopped running the country for a few days because his child passed away?
Yeah, like
from a tragic...
only a couple days is when he only locked himself in his room for a couple days.
And not for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just try looking at it from a slightly more empathetic perspective.
Yes. The following year, Lincoln would contract a nearly deadly bout of smallpox. This again prohibited him from carrying out his typical presidential duties, as it limited the number of people that he could meet with. His valet, a black man, contracted smallpox at the same time as Lincoln and would actually very sadly pass away from the illness. In more recent years, many historians have looked back at Lincoln's health and believe he actually had Marfan syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that would explain why Lincoln was so tall, his eyes were so sunken in, his cheeks were so protruding. At a minimum, though, we do know for a fact that he suffered from chronic depression and that this depression was reflected in the way he operated the White House and the Civil War, despite the fact that it was largely hidden from the public, continuing to this day.
Have you ever wondered where certain phrases come from?
Absolutely. Like, what are the origins of, I hope you fall on your sword?
Ouch. Or where did the phrase come hell or high water come from?
Or where does the cat got your tongue phrase come from? Tell us already.
All right. If you or our listeners would like to learn exactly why we need to mind our P's and Q's in a fun 30-minute or less segment, you should check out the Why Do We Say That podcast.
Now entering into their second season, every Tuesday, father and son, Scott and Liam Kelly, explain the meaning behind everyday phrases. And as a bonus, at the end of each episode, they play a fun round of What Word Am I?
Ooh, how fun. You can find Why Do We Say That anywhere podcasts are available, so shake a leg and check them out now.
I wonder why we say that. I think we all know that Abraham Lincoln was the first U.S. president to be assassinated. Tragically, less than 20 years later, another U.S. president would be assassinated. This president, however, did not die immediately after being shot. In fact, this president, James Garfield, would die 2 months later due to complications with sepsis. But for those 2 months, he would continue to, quote unquote, run the White House while his deteriorating health was, for the most part, you guessed it, concealed from the public.
Crazy. What?
You're shocked, I can tell. The assassination of James Garfield is on my long list of future topics, so we won't dive into it too deeply here. But on July 2nd, 1881, when Garfield arrived at the Baltimore and Potomac train station, a man named Charles Coteau, who had been stalking Garfield for weeks, shot him twice.
It's always interesting to think of like stalking happening in 1881.
Because it was. I mean, like the early days, like he didn't have any like Secret Service or any bodyguards. In fact, Lincoln, it was kind of like a revolutionary thing that for a period of time he had bodyguards, and that was only because half the country violently hated him.
Yeah.
The first bullet, it grazed Garfield's arm, but the second lodged itself into his lower back. The bullet managed to miss all of the major arteries and vital organs, and it's generally believed that Garfield would have survived this injury. But let's think back to the time period.
I was just going to say, if it had been 2000 and whatever.
Totally. Sanitation and sterilization were not then what they are today. Instead, as doctors tended to Garfield, they were shoving their typhoid Mary fingers into his wound.
their peach pie ice cream fingers. Had they just like licked their fingers after like a steak dinner?
Touch some public transportation
Yeah.
poles.
Some trams. Took the tram to wherever this happened.
Exactly. They were at a train station. And they were shoving those fingers into his wound in an attempt to locate the bullet. Mm-hmm. It's understood that Garfield eventually died as a result of an infection and the overall lack of sanitation by his medical professionals.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the world knew about Garfield being shot. It's not as though this was concealed.
No.
And it should also be noted that American newspapers did regularly report on Garfield's ever-evolving medical condition, and Garfield himself was fairly forthcoming about how he was doing. In contrast, the American public was not told the full extent of his condition. I spoke with our friend Mike from the Necronomipod podcast because they did an amazing episode about James Garfield's assassination that I highly recommend that you check out.
Listen to it.
He shared with me that he found in his research that Garfield's lead physician, a man named Dr. Willard Bliss, doctor was his first name, not just his title.
No. Like birth?
That is his birth first name.
So he was meant to do this.
Imagine if you went on to become a legal secretary.
Oh my God. Or like an event planner and your name is Doctor.
I mean, your parents have a right to be disappointed in you then.
Yeah, that's like self-fulfilling prophecy, except like
you must fulfill
too
it.
Much pressure.
But you must fulfill it because honestly, then you're disappointing yourself.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, right?
Why?
Anyway, this doctor named Doctor, he very much misled the press in regard to the seriousness of Garfield's condition. As a result, the American public was unaware that for the 2 months that Garfield was essentially on his deathbed, losing nearly 100 pounds in only 80 days, basically nothing was happening in the executive office of the White House. When Garfield did pass away, the presidency was assumed by his vice president, Chester Arthur, and we've got a back-to-back story here because while Arthur was serving as president, he learned that he had a fatal kidney illness.
Oh no.
He knew that he was dying throughout his entire presidency, though he only told a few of his closest people. No one in the public knew about this illness. In fact, history didn't know about his illness until the 1970s.
Which is crazy.
That's crazy. Arthur was so adamant about his health remaining a secret that when he died from the disease less than 2 years after serving as president, he ordered for his sons to supervise the burning of the majority of his personal records.
First of all, I can't imagine caring that much about what people think of me after I'm dead.
I don't know. I'm on the fence about that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to think on that one.
I could understand why someone would be. I just personally am like, I'm dead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to justify
did the people around me who I lived with care and love me?
That's enough.
That's enough.
Yeah, no, I need admiration from everybody.
Forever.
Forever and ever.
All
amen.
Time.
I need everyone to love me, even those that have never met me.
Oh my God. I could relate to that.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, my anxiety relates to that.
Yeah.
The next president's illness was so secret that it involved a giant cover-up.
Oh no.
This president had an undercover operation conducted on a private yacht to have the surgical removal of a cancerous tumor hidden from the public.
I'm just like, of all places, why a yacht? It's got to be choppy waters, man.
Yeah. I mean, I'll kind of explain why, but I'm going to explain, but it doesn't make more sense.
Okay.
In 1893, not long after beginning his second term as president, Grover Cleveland noticed a bump on the roof of his mouth.
Oh, no.
When this bump continued to become larger, he sought medical professionals who told him that the bump was a cancerous tumor that needed to be removed right away.
Yeah.
Cleveland was scheduled to address Congress in August of that year. Therefore, he would need to have the tumor removed and have fully recovered from the surgery by then. Not wanting to alarm the public regarding his condition, he made the decision that this surgery would have to remain a secret. But he would have to explain away why he was going to be MIA for a handful of days.
Vacation.
Yeah, but even these times, like the late 1800s, it's still weird for a president to go missing for several days.
Vacation.
As president, unacceptable. Not allowed.
Vacation days. You're allowed to take some time.
You're allowed to take your PTO. He did this by reaching out to a friend of his that owned a yacht and then had a public announcement made that he would be going on a 4-day fishing trip on the yacht with his buddy.
Mm-hmm.
What the public didn't know was that this yacht had been converted into a surgical center with 6 surgeons on board.
Mm-hmm.
The surgery took place on July 1st, 1893, and took about 90 minutes in total.
That's nothing for surgeries.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The tumor was found to be larger than originally anticipated, and it ended up requiring, in order to remove the tumor, the removal of 5 teeth and part of the jawbone. The president would lose inches off of his palate, which would later be filled by way of an implant. Fortunately for the president, his number one concern had not been touched. I'm going to show you a picture here, Leah. Don't worry, we're not looking at any tumors or anything. We're just looking at a picture of Grover Cleveland, and I'm hoping you can tell me, based on this picture, what you think his signature iconic piece was. And number one concern.
The stash.
The stash.
The stash looks great.
Yeah. Fully intact.
Fully intact.
It's an intense one, no?
It's longer than I would want my significant other stash to be.
Yeah. Cleveland feared that if his signature mustache had been compromised in the course of the surgery, the public would know that he had lied about this yacht trip.
Let me just talk about like all of the museums we went to and stuff. The fucking facial hair, man.
Intense.
It's so intense. And I'm like, also, you can like track where it's like, oh, that guy was a renegade. Where it's like, that guy, it was like some guy, his name was Mutton or something.
Yeah.
And it's the mutton chops.
Yep.
And I'm like, he
started the revolution.
Could you imagine being so crazy that you were like, I'm going to grow this shit on my fucking face and I'm going to shave it in weird ways? And being the first person to do that.
And then it picked up. And same goes for like, I'm going to be the first guy that's going to like kind of cleanly shave my face and kind of stylize and structure my facial hair in a more neat way.
Yeah.
And then that ends up picking up too.
And then like you could like track it. You could be like, oh, here's all the presidents. Oh, mustaches are in. Like they're in now.
And now they're out.
Yeah. No, truly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I said, though, lucky him, the surgeons were able to complete the surgery without touching his precious stash, and Cleveland was able to address Congress in August and generally appeared to recover rather well from the recent surgery.
Okay.
But the media actually wouldn't leave him alone. The media was suspicious about this 4-day trip. I understand your like empathetic side of like, it's still a job. You still should have vacation days. As president,
but it's also the president.
You really don't. What president goes MIA for 4 full days? It's unheard of.
Yeah.
Hounded by the media, one of the doctors did end up spilling the beans and telling the press about this secret surgery. Cleveland denied the rumors and began a successful smear campaign against the loose-lipped doctor.
No. Cleveland.
The story of this surgery would continue to remain, for the most part, a secret until nearly a decade after Cleveland's death, when the truth was finally revealed. Pretty crazy, right? All because of the stash. But a secret surgery that was conducted during his presidency that no one knew about till long after his death.
I'm sure there were more that we don't even know about.
Oh, I'm confident that there are.
Yeah.
Confident.
Mm-hmm.
The next president to largely conceal his health from the public in a major way was Woodrow Wilson. Wilson became the 28th president of the United States in 1913. In 1919, during his second term, Wilson suffered a horrendous stroke. And it should be noted, and this is like truly, truly awful, this was not Wilson's first stroke. In fact, between 1896 and the incident we're talking about here in 1919, it's believed that Wilson had 3 strokes. On October 2nd, 1919, Wilson suffered a 4th and likely most devastating stroke. This stroke was so devastating that it left him paralyzed on his left side and made it so that he could only partially see out of his right eye. Wilson would remain in bed for weeks and would only be seen by his doctor and his wife. I would consider the realities of Wilson's condition to be one of the greatest cover-ups in presidential illness history, because what many people didn't realize at the time was that Wilson's wife, Edith, was essentially running the show. Mm-hmm. In fact, she has since been described as the first female president of the United States. Even prior to Wilson's 4th stroke, Edith was privy to information primarily exclusive to the president. Long before his stroke, Edith was known to, at the request of her husband, sit in on political and sometimes highly classified meetings so that when the meeting was over, she could give her husband all her thoughts. Wilson gave her full access to classified documents, including his mail. She was even privy to secret wartime codes. Mm-hmm. Given this experience and exposure, she was fairly equipped to take things over when it was clear that her husband no longer could. If members of the cabinet or Congress came to meet with the president, she met with them instead. If there were important documents for the president to look over, she would look over them first. If she could not make a decision about them on her own, she would go to his room and read them to him. Although I'm sure it was suspected, no one but Edith and the president's physician knew Wilson's true condition. And the true conditions of his health were certainly concealed from the general public. In fact, it wouldn't be for a few more months, in February of 1920, that news began to be reported about the stroke that the president had suffered. It's worth noting, however, that at this time in history, the 25th Amendment did not yet exist. And for those unfamiliar with the 25th Amendment, this is the amendment that provides clarification regarding the vice president becoming president should it be determined that the current president is unable or unfit to perform their presidential duties. This amendment would not be passed until 1965. It's important to note that Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6 of the U.S. Constitution does have language about the vice president assuming presidential duties if the current president determines that they themselves is unable or, is dead. However, it's pretty ambiguous and doesn't really clarify if the vice president officially becomes president in this case or simply just takes on the powers and duties of the presidency. The 25th Amendment was passed in 1965 to resolve that ambiguity and also makes it so that it's not just the president themselves who decides if he or she is unfit or unable to perform presidential duties, but makes it so that the vice president and the majority of the Congress or other acting body can instead make this determination.
Yeah, so I feel like that's the turning point where presidential illnesses, obviously they're still hush-hush, they're kept under wraps, they're not widely disseminated.
Yeah.
But I feel like the 1965, 25th Amendment is kind of the turning point in which it's I don't know, it's it puts it on paper where
I totally agree.
You have to report that at least to your colleagues.
Yeah, because I would say even now, perhaps we don't know every single thing about Joe Biden's health, right?
Yeah.
But when he recently had a colonoscopy performed, he did assert the 25th Amendment and make Kamala Harris, our current vice president, he did essentially give her the powers and the duties of the presidency for a short period of time while he was in surgery. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're totally correct that it does provide for more transparency by way of the 25th Amendment.
Yeah.
By the end of Wilson's presidency, Edith had essentially been running the ship for 17 months. Although she continued to deny that. In fact, here's a quote from her. She said, quote, "I myself never made a single decision regarding the disposition of public affairs. The only decision that was mine was what was important and what was not. And the very important decision of when to present matters to my husband," unquote.
I don't like that you're diminishing the role that you played and your badass contribution.
I agree with you and I disagree in that I totally agree that she's negating all the stuff that she did, but also it's illegal.
Oh yeah.
It would have been literally illegal
totally.
To be I did everything, all the powers and duties of the presidency without actually being the president.
Totally.
She can't really admit how much she probably did.
Yeah, no, because that's true. We elected a certain person, and if their spouse or loved one is running the country, that's
not what we voted for.
That's not what we voted for.
Yeah,
totally.
So I think that's why she said what she said.
Okay.
Wilson had intended to run for a third term. Remember, this was before the 27th Amendment, which limited the number of terms the president could serve to 2. But the 1919 stroke made that impossible. In fact, just 3 years after completing his second term, Wilson would pass away. Wilson's health condition did have a direct consequence and effect on his presidency. He was a huge supporter of the United States becoming a part of the League of Nations, but was unable to continue to fight for this due to his health. The League of Nations would end up dissolving in 1946, largely considered unsuccessful in that it was incapable of preventing World War II. But many argue that if the United States had been involved in the League, it would have made a difference. We will never know. I believe most people nowadays know that Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR, contracted polio when he was 39 years old, which eventually caused him to be paralyzed from the waist down.
So scary.
So scary at that age, too. And I guess I didn't actually put this in my notes here, but it has more recently been thought maybe he actually ended up contracting Guillain-Barré instead of...
I didn't know that.
Instead of polio. Yeah, some more recent historians believe that. So... yeah, because it's interesting to get polio so late in life.
Yeah.
Typically it was something that hit people in this time period in their childhood. So that's why more recent historians think maybe it was Guillain-Barré instead.
Okay.
He worked hard to conceal his paralysis, eventually working up the strength to walk short distances when wearing leg braces and when he had people on either side of him for support. Roosevelt would employ a series of tricks to give the impression that he could walk on his own, but he was always aided by braces and or a cane and or the physical support of another body.
This is the one where I'm like, it didn't affect his mind, right?
His mental capacity.
His mental capacity, his ability to run the country. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that we have moved to a point where something like this would be accepted.
I think we have, because I have seen a recent statue made of him that it's a statue of him sitting in his wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And it's considered to be like a great representation of someone that's differently abled, mm-hmm. but so capable and so successful. In fact, a lot of people would consider him to be one of our greatest presidents. Mm-hmm. He was elected for 4 terms.
Yeah.
It's a great representation and a great advocate even for differently abled people. But I think, this time period is just so weird and so interesting, right? Because I have a picture here of Roosevelt and his wife, Eleanor. They're standing on a train and waving to the public. And I feel like if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't spot any signs of his disability. But because we are looking for it, what are the things that you notice here?
Well, he's clearly leaning on her for support. She's mm-hmm. holding his arm in a way that's clearly supportive. Mm-hmm. He's also, it looks like, leaning on the rail there. Exactly. There's a rail kind of blocking the view of his body a little bit more. I knowing what we know now.
But if you didn't know that, if you were just looking at this picture.
Oh, it just looks like a dude standing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think anything of that.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
The great majority of people had no idea that Roosevelt relied on a wheelchair to get around. Mm-hmm. In a move that sounds unheard of in today's day and age with paparazzi and whatnot, FDR had an agreement with the media that they would not take photographs and videos of him while he was walking, nor while getting in and out of vehicles, and that pictures would all be shot from the waist up.
What the hell did he, he must have been so respected.
And also, for any press I would say for any press that did not abide by this agreement, they would be hunted down by the Secret Service and the evidence would be destroyed. Okay. But I think it's just different. Like in today's day and age, we're going to talk about JFK shortly and all the affairs that we know JFK had. Like there was an agreement with the media that they wouldn't be taking pictures of these women coming in and out of the White House.
So weird.
It's weird in today's.
Yeah. Like where everybody has a camera, anyone can photograph you and you get paid a lot of money for it.
Yes. It's pretty crazy. It's hard to even imagine this time period. Yeah. If you do right now, just like a quick Google search for Franklin D. Roosevelt, you will find that most pictures are indeed taken from the waist up. And those that do show Roosevelt's full body were taken while he was sitting in a chair and do not indicate in any way that his legs were not functioning. It's pretty amazing. And like I already said, honestly, just hard to imagine in today's day and age. Mm-hmm. Roosevelt had a number of other health issues throughout his long presidency, including high blood pressure, poor circulation, difficulty breathing, skin cancer, and more. We know that only a few months into his 4th term, yes, again, Roosevelt, he was elected to 4 presidential terms. Again, this was before the ratification of the 27th Amendment, that FDR, he did suffer a massive stroke and he died on April 12th, 1945.
And I do believe that he is the only one that served more than 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because there was one that served 1 and then another one later.
Grover Cleveland, had the tumor and had it removed on the yacht. He was our 22nd and our 24th president.
But Roosevelt was the only one that served more than that.
More than 2 consecutive terms.
More than 2 consecutive, yep.
Again, it's just amazing to me that Roosevelt was able to conceal that he was differently abled on such a large scale and that the general public did not know about it for a long time. Gregory Gallagher, the author of a book titled FDR's Splendid Deception, wrote, quote, "Many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people saw him at fairly close range over the White House years, and most did not notice that he was physically handicapped," unquote. That's amazing!
Yeah, he's like the most gaslighty kind of, in this context.
It's crazy.
Just like, what? Me? No, I can't. What? I'm not in a wheelchair.
There actually, in more recent years, there's a picture of him in his wheelchair kind of being wheeled around the White House. Yeah. And that was for a very long time a very hidden artifact. I mean, really, if you were just to Google him right now, you won't really find pictures of him.
Yeah. I do find it
like
interesting that a lot of more recent movies and stuff very much depict him in his wheelchair. Like, I'm thinking of Pearl Harbor,
Yep.
and I'm thinking of, like, Annie, one of the Annie movies.
Oh, yeah.
They show him in his wheelchair.
I forgot about that. Yes.
I think.
No, they do.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so, yeah, that's just interesting. That shows that it's a little more accepted nowadays.
Well, not only accepted, but it's important. You know, it goes back to what we said early on in the episode, that to learn that people are maybe struggling physically or mentally, or just have these hurdles physically and mentally, but are still able to accomplish such amazing things.
Yeah.
It's important to be transparent about those types of things.
Totally.
Speaking of presidents that very much kept their health conditions under wraps, let's talk about John F. Kennedy.
JFK.
Amazingly, for a man that was as physically sick as Kennedy was, when we think back on him, I think most of us think of his youth and vitality.
For sure.
We think of that Camelot depiction of him and Jackie and their young, beautiful family. Kennedy was the youngest person elected to the presidency at 43 years old. I should mention that Theodore Roosevelt was 42 when he became president, but that was not by election. He succeeded the presidency when William McKinley was assassinated. Mm-hmm. What most people did not know was how riddled Kennedy was with illnesses. In fact, Kennedy lived his life in almost constant pain. Mm-hmm. As a kid, he was sick a lot, between measles, scarlet fever, chickenpox, bronchitis, whooping cough, jaundice. He had it all. Yeah. He also suffered with gastrointestinal issues, allergies, and chronic back pain that forced him to wear a back brace, and for which he would have a number of surgeries. Perhaps the greatest of Kennedy's health concerns was when, in 1947, at the age of 30, Kennedy was diagnosed with Addison's disease. Addison's is a rare disease in which your adrenal glands don't produce enough cortisol, which can result in severe fatigue, muscle and joint pains, weight loss, and more. In fact, one of the common symptoms of Addison's is darkening or bronzing of the skin, which ironically, Kennedy's tanned skin was an image commonly associated with his youthfulness.
Totally, yeah.
That was something that was commented on between, when he was doing his televised presidential debates. People were talking about how tan he was. Yep. After seeing his Addison's diagnosis, one doctor was quoted as saying that he didn't expect Kennedy to live more than a year.
Whoa.
Yeah. As a result of all of these health issues, Kennedy would experience fevers, prostate issues, UTIs, although the UTIs may or may not have something to do with his many sexual escapades. One story that I've heard about Kennedy and his health issues that really put it all into perspective for me was learning that for most of his adult life, he couldn't even bend over to tie his own shoes.
I knew that he suffered with a lot of stuff, but I didn't know that.
It was to that extent.
Yeah.
To combat the chronic pain and discomfort, Kennedy was often on a cocktail of drugs, which included steroids, sleeping pills, painkillers, tranquilizers, anti-anxiety medication, and testosterone.
Whoa.
Much like Roosevelt before him, Kennedy went to great lengths to conceal his health conditions and heavy drug use while he was serving as the 35th president. In fact, one time when point blank asked by a historian about rumors of him having Addison's, Kennedy responded and said, quote, "No one who has the real Addison's disease should run for the presidency, but I do not have it," unquote.
Thanks.
It wouldn't be until after his death that the general public would know of his diagnosis. His health concerns were closely guarded. Only his immediate family and friends knew, out of fear that he may not have been as successful in politics had the general public known.
Yeah.
And just because it's an interesting fact that I think fits in here perfectly, there is a bit of conspiracy theory surrounding Kennedy's back brace and his assassination. Many believe that because Kennedy was wearing a back brace at the time of his brutal assassination, he was unable to bend his back and was therefore unable to duck before he was struck by the second and fatal bullet. Okay, the final president I would like to highlight is Ronald Reagan. In our episode 38, we discussed the assassination attempt on Reagan. In addition to that, Reagan also had a number of cancer scares while he was in office. But the primary illness that was largely concealed, if you believe that it was indeed occurring while he was in office, was Alzheimer's disease.
Oh.
Yeah. Reagan would not be diagnosed with the disease until 5 years after he had completed his second presidential term. But his own son, Ron Reagan, would reveal that he actually spotted signs of the disease while his dad was in the White House.
Most people don't want to hear that.
Right. Additionally, some researchers have noted variations in Reagan's speech and language over the course of his presidency, which could point to signs of dementia. But of course, this information was concealed at the time from the general public.
I don't like it.
It makes you feel uncomfy.
There's like certain things where I'm like, okay, if it's like a physical thing, but you're still mentally there. But like Alzheimer's is one where it's like, you're not mentally there.
Yes. And you're running the country.
Yes.
Uncomfy. Before we close out this episode, I did want to take note of a few really quick honorable mentions. Because their illnesses were not hidden because they, died while in office, I did not mention William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, nor Warren Harding. Mm-hmm. William Howard Taft, the 27th U.S. president, was a pretty heavy guy, weighing over 300 pounds while president. His obesity led to a number of health issues, including severe sleep apnea and very high blood pressure. It was noted by one of his aides in 1911, so toward the middle of his presidential term, that Taft, quote, pants for breath at every step, unquote. Next honorable mention, while playing golf in September of 1955, 34th President of the United States, Dwight Eisenhower, had a heart attack. Initially, they hid this from the public by simply stating that the president had, quote, a digestive upset, unquote. But his camp did eventually come forward with the truth about Eisenhower's condition and provided the public with updates on how he was doing.
Okay.
And I wanted to do a final honorable mention to the White House water supply. I didn't know where else to fit this into the episode, but since we are discussing presidents and illnesses, I had to mention that until 1850, there was no sewage system in the White House. And the White House water supply was disgusting.
Oh, I didn't know this.
It's been speculated that this contaminated water may have contributed to the deaths of William Henry Harrison, James K. Polk, Zachary Taylor, and perhaps even Abraham Lincoln's son, Willie.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
In closing out this episode, it's no surprise that presidents hide their health conditions. Yeah. As presidential historian Douglas Brinkley said, quote, presidents often tried to conceal illness for fear that it would make them seem weak and infective, unquote. Or, as professor of political science Dr. Burt Rockman said, quote, mostly presidents have hidden their ailments or minimized their seriousness so as to avoid questions about their ability to carry out their duties.
Totally.
However, this is a highly stressful job for those who take it conscientiously.
Which I hope all of them do.
Right. The quote continues to say, moreover, most are mature males, which means that they have reached the danger zone years of increased serious risk to their health. Mm-hmm. Denial of serious health issues becomes incumbent to quash doubts about presidential fitness for office. Unquote.
I mean, like, just look at the most recent run for president. Everyone's saying, like, Biden is the oldest president who would be elected. And is he mentally fit to do it? I get it. I also think it's important to be upfront and forthcoming about things.
It's a fine line because I remember feeling that way in late 2020 that historically we aren't transparent about the realities of our president's health conditions. However, we need to know.
Yeah.
We need to know if like the public deserves to know if we're about to get a new president because this one's not going to survive.
Yeah.
It's a very fine line and I don't exactly know where that line is drawn. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of #History.
We will share the pictures that we discussed on today's episode to our Instagram, and all sources used to put together the episode can be found on our website at #history-pod.com.
Subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use, share about us with your family and friends, and then give us a rate and review.
And social media.
Yes.
Be sure to check us out on there.
Please.
We're on Instagram at #history_podcast. We're also on TikTok at #history, all one word. And we are on Twitter at #history_.
And come join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. You also get access to some behind the scenes content, weekly #hangout episodes, and automatic 15% off all merchandise. And we mail you cards and stickers.
Rachel mails you cards and stickers.
That's what I do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Wow. Intuition challenge.
We're so in sync.
We're so in sync. It's not like we looked at each other the entire time, right?
A shot. Oh, okay. No, we're good. It's still going. It just.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, it just wasn't over. I would have been like, we're done for the day. We're going to be done. And that's a perfect segue. That's a perfect save. Oh my God, I just did it again.
Segue.
It's because I took that chug of the Chernobyl drink at the end. Notifications that someone's at the front door. No?
Oh, it was you, like 5 hours ago.
I was like, I feel like I would see. The assassination.
Yep.
Baltimore, and I always pronounce it incorrectly. Potomac. I always want to say Potomac.
No, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Arrived at the Baltimore, and I already forgot what you just said.
Potomac.
Gateau, who had been stalking Garfield.
That is fine, though.
Oh, yeah. Gateau's fine. Well, but also I've studied this a lot, so Gateau's easy. I already forgot how to say it again.
The second O is the emphasis. Potomac.
That helps me so much.
Potomac.
The Potomac.
Potomac.
The Potomac.
Yeah.
Got it. Charles Gateau. Gateau! Emphasis on all the toes.
So many toes.
Sit in on political and sometimes had to. Oh my God. Congratulations. Does it say congratulations?
On building equity in your home. Cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
In the room where
that was weird.
Room where it happened. The room where it happened. The room where it happened. I want to be in the room where it happened. The room where it happened. The room where it happened. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. She looked at me. She made very intense eye contact and just went, yeah.
That was so good, right?